Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special bonus episode, our character background meet and geek of I Cast Fireball. I'm Jacob, your guide through this character background questionnaire, and our character and the player playing that character is...
Well, that character would be Ataraxia Caelian, and the player behind him is me, Ned Wilcock. Hello.
Oh, it's Ned, everybody!
Hello. We are here for a party.
Party time. I don't know why I led such a long, who is it? When literally the title of this will say who it is.
Right?
So, not too much of a suspense-filled intro. But yes, we are talking to Ned today, or whatever time you're listening to your podcast, and we are talking specifically about the captain, Ataraxia Caelian. Now,
yes,
as a reminder, we're not diving too much into backstory per se. We might give a little bit of details, obviously, for those that have the details that have already been kind of brought to light in just the natural progression of the episodes. But this is more focused toward the background of the character, specifically what motivated Ned to create this character, what choices he made in creating this character, and again, just the overall vibes he wanted to achieve, because if we know vibes, we know that's Ataraxia's MO right there.
Very much so. Very, very, very much so.
Well, let's dive into it. Ned, my first question for you is, as all of us know by now, Ataraxia is a bard. So the question is, why did you choose this campaign, this season, this moment to play a bard?
Well, it largely goes to the fact that during our first campaign, you and I would often joke about whoever's character dies first gets to bring in their bard backup character. Yes. And we saw kind of an interesting amount of hype amongst our fans. Like, we were getting even emails coming in being like, I hope that somebody does play a bard in the next campaign. And I was like, well, I really do like my bard backup character, so I figured might as well bring it on in. And I do really love playing support classes. I love playing spellcasters. I have a very, very hard time actually playing martial classes because I just don't feel like I have as much versatility to play around with stuff. I like being able to have a big, box of tools that I can reach into with different spells and whatnot to try and solve a bunch of different problems. So I very much lean towards the spellcasters for that reason. And again, Fleeple was, even though he did have a lot of offensive capabilities, he also was a support character. And now Ataraxia is just full 100% support character. And it's been a fun thing to try out so far.
I've noticed that both characters that you've played so far in our campaigns have been very much, Fleeple has had a certain amount of oomph. Who can forget the amount of times he called down Moonbeam on anybody he didn't like? But they definitely have a support focus to them. Kind of, I guess, a side note, it seems like that's your forte, the place you like to play the most. Have you ventured in kind of being more of I'm going to be like a frontline heavy, or glass cannon, just a heavy hitter character? Have you ever ventured in that? And I guess what is the pros and cons to you for both sides of that?
Yeah, I haven't had a ton of opportunities to be the player in D&D, unfortunately. It's most of the D&D that I have played as a player is recorded. It's what you're listening to right now. But I have I did a very brief, it was a maybe 3-session test campaign where I played as a fighter, a battle master, because I wanted something again with some complexity. So I tried out the battle master and it wasn't really feeling it quite so much. I tried playing a monk in a campaign for a little bit and it was a fun character, but after a while I was I'm just hitting stuff over and over again. And it started to get a little bit bland to me. I've had a couple of those experiences here and there, and for me, what it really comes down to is the amount of options that I have available to me to solve problems as a player will really help kind of determine how well I'm able to pay attention and stay invested with what's going on during the session. because if it's like, okay, I am a fighter, I hit things with my sword. When it's my turn, I will hit things with my sword, and then it's everybody else's turns, and then when it's my turn, I will hit stuff with my sword again. And it's very easy for me to kind of just zone out and feel like I'm not engaging much with the story behind the combat. So that for me is a big reason why I lean towards, well, the mechanical reason, I suppose, why I lean towards spellcasting characters. But thematically, it's just really cool being able to have these weird little guys who can do weird little things.
Yeah. Well, I imagine because you're saying also that you haven't been the player much, you've been more of the DM in a lot of your experiences. DM is wielding some heavy hitters. So
that is true.
It probably is a nice thing to be like, you know what, I'm going to take the support role, and that opens up the options, like you said, and creates or gives you the ability to create more opportunity of, okay, how can I support what, you know, Jacob's character is doing, or Mickey's character is doing, or just the battlefield or situation, puzzle, dungeon crawl, whatever it is in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, going back with Ataraxia, the bard now, Ataraxia is a very unique background in his race. Ataraxia is a satyr. Tell us a little bit about that choice and why you were drawn to the satyr specifically, and especially the satyr for this bard character.
Yeah, there were a few different things that happened kind of in a row that led to the introduction of this character. And I suppose I should say that this is not the first time I have actually played Ataraxia in a campaign. Like with Fleeple, I played him for like 3 or 4 sessions or so way back in the day when Thomas was trying to get a group of people together to play Forge of Fury. And I believe you were in that campaign as well. You were the bard in that one, weren't you?
Forge of Fury. When did we do that? Remind me of that.
It was back in like 2018.
Was that like a in-person one, like just a one-shot little thing?
It was online, and there were a whole bunch of people there that I didn't recognize.
I don't remember that, but I mean if it's the bard that I played, this isn't my background or my backup bard character, but I did play a dwarf bard who had like a fiddle, and I think we were going through a cave system. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes,
okay.
That's the one.
Then yes, I totally in my memory for some reason put that in person, but I guess it was online. Okay. So yes, you were a satyr in that experience, you saying?
Well, Fleeple was the character that I played in that campaign.
Yes.
And I decided to bring him back for this campaign. And then Ataraxia, it was actually the campaign, it's the only campaign aside from I Cast Fireball that I have played from beginning to end as a player. And it was run by my friend Christian from Improv Tabletop. And that's actually the campaign where I was playing a monk. I started playing a monk for the first few levels, and then after a while I was like, I can't do this. I need to switch to a magic character. And so I started coming up with ideas for who I wanted to bring in. And so the name Ataraxia actually comes from a song by a really obscure band called the One and Only People Mover. It's a weird band. I will admit, it's a weird band.
Spotify that one.
Yes. Yeah, the One and Only People Mover, PPLMVR. They dress up as Yetis, and they've got like this hard rock, heavily like auto-tuned vocal style. It's wild. But the song on their album, The Chosen, it's called Ataraxia, and that was the first time I'd heard that word. And Ataraxia itself is a word for a state of being. It's very similar to Nirvana, but it's like sort of the Greek way, their interpretation of what that state is. It's a state of imperturbability. So when I say occasionally in the campaign that Ataraxia literally can't be bothered, like imperturbability, you cannot be perturbed when you are experiencing the state of Ataraxia. You cannot be bothered. And so with this name in mind, like I really loved this song, and I was listening to it over and over again thinking, I want to make a D&D character based off of this. And I, for a while, was thinking maybe it'd be like a celestial warlock or something, this character that can only feel bliss. That was like the first concept I came into it with, was this character who can only feel Ataraxia. And after a while, I got in the mail a Kickstarter, a D&D adventure that I'd kickstarted called Odyssey of the Dragonlords, which I believe I've mentioned a few different times. It's the book that Fleeple's subclass was from. It's the book that Ataraxia's subclass is from. It's this Greek mythology themed adventure that was kickstarted before Mythic Odysseys of Theros was even announced. And I was looking in this book and I saw the College of Epic Poetry Bard, and I was like, that would be so cool. And they had a satyr race in there as well. And I was like, that's a really cool combination of just like this little satyr bard writing down the stories of the people that he's traveling around with. And so that was really kind of how that character came together, the selection of the race, the selection of the class, and the main character concept. But as I played as a satyr in that initial campaign, I came to just really love the thematics of it, playing this little Feywild creature who's managed to kind of slip into the material plane. And there is that mythological aspect of it, where there's always this sense of like, this creature is something a little bit more than it probably seems on the surface. And for this campaign, I am using the satyr rules that were released officially for D&D 5e, and I think they're better than the ones I was using initially. But yeah, when it came time to sort of repurpose this character for this campaign, I took largely the same concept, but tweaked a couple things here and there, and now here we are. Here we have the man.
The man, the myth, the legend, or the teenager, I should say, the myth, the legend, which I love
Right.
that element too, because you're this ataraxia nirvana, I can't be bothered, and you picked an age where probably all of us were the most bothered by things, like 13
Right.
years old, a teenager, that's like the epitome of everything can annoy me. I am the most insecure about myself and my state of being. I don't know who I am. And yet that is the age of the person who cannot be bothered at all in this campaign.
Yeah, and now I think about it, the reason I think why I chose to make him a 13-year-old is around that time, I was getting kind of annoyed with a lot of the D&D class tropes that were getting like super popular all over like r/D&D memes and stuff, where it's like, okay, if you're playing as a rogue, that means you have to steal stuff from your party when they're not looking.
Yeah.
And if you're playing as a warlock, that means you have to betray your party. And if you're playing as a bard, you have to be seducing stuff all the time. And I was like, I am going to play a bard who is 13 years old so that he will not be seducing anything. Because I was not seducing anything when I was 13 years old, let me tell you that.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Our next question for this is specifically the background of Ataraxia. In D&D 5e, you can pick a background that kind of gives you some abilities. You can also, it can just be a pull, or a full ability puller, if you will, and you don't really have to actually connect that to your character at all. But as we've known, we kind of like to build a little bit into our characters. So I'm going to ask, what is Ataraxia's background, and how did that help you, if at all, shape the character that you created?
I really went back and forth between two different backgrounds, the haunted one and the investigator.
You're gonna go Lance with the haunted one. That's what Lance's was.
The haunted one, yeah. And that's what he was the first time around that I played him. And, you know, it makes sense. He's this cursed little kid. And so there's, you know, obviously a haunted aspect to that just right from the beginning. But also, he is trying to seek out new stories. He's trying to figure out what happened to his mother. He is investigating. So that's why the investigator also spoke to me. And thematically, I thought both of them fit really well. So it did really kind of come down ultimately to which one gave me the proficiencies that I thought were better suited towards Ataraxia and his goals. So I ended up going with Investigator, ultimately speaking, because of those proficiencies and because it's got this fun ability, Official Inquiry, which I haven't pulled out yet, but I think could do pretty well for Ataraxia as the captain. You're experienced at gaining access to people and places to get the information you need. Through a combination of fast talking, determination, and official-looking documentation, you can gain access to a place or an individual related to a crime you're investigating. Those who aren't involved in your investigation avoid impeding you or pass along your requests. Additionally, local law enforcement has firm opinions about you, viewing you as either a nuisance or one of their own.
Interesting how that could definitely play into future things we get into.
Yeah, especially as we start interacting with maybe some people a bit higher up in, like, I don't want to give away too much about, like, sort of the lore of the Shackles, but as the free captains, certainly there is a much more freebooting lawlessness to this conglomeration of people than there are in a lot of the other nations on Golarion. But even still, there is some need for a little bit of order. You need, even if you don't have rules, you have to have guidelines. And so there is like a ruling body of the shackles of the free captains. And so maybe at some point we'll start interacting with them a little bit more. And if we do get to that point, this feature could come in really handy.
And what abilities, remind us again, what abilities are you, that's the kind of special one for the background, but what are the proficiencies and things that you get as an investigator?
Yeah, let me pull it up real quick. Yeah, so the skill proficiencies that you get to choose from as the investigator are Insight, Investigation, and Perception. These are like, for me, the top 3 skills in the entire game. Because for me, as a player, I love the information exchange that happens in D&D. I am in it to discover the story. And so with perception, that's being able to notice the things happening around you. With investigation, it's being able to deduce things about what you're finding. And with insight, it's being able to know what other people are thinking and what's going on kind of internally with them. And so all of these are perfect for the investigator and perfect for a player like me who is very motivated by gathering information and knowledge within the campaign. And so I think ultimately I chose perception and insight. And actually, those are the 2 that, as a bard, you get expertise, which means you can double your proficiency bonus. And those are the 2 skills that I have taken my expertise in.
Smart. Yes, I loved. As a rogue, you could do that as well. Lance had that ability. And actually, my character right now, Max, actually has somewhat of a ranger ability to bump up his perception. And so that is really nice where you just double it up and you're like, yep, I'm pretty good at this.
It's so great. And like of those 3, I said that like those 3 are top tier for me, but perception is absolutely the top of the list. That is my favorite skill in the entire game.
It is really good, really good. This is my first time really playing a high perception character, and it definitely has its benefits. The last campaign we did, our first campaign, Lance was okay at perception, but investigation was his big thing, which is also a fun thing, especially when you're trying to, look for particular documents or secrets in a room. So definitely all great traits, and a great background to give you those things.
Yeah, and the thing that's actually just coming back to me right now is both of these backgrounds that I was debating between are in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. So even though I didn't choose the one that has the word haunted in the name, I still got one of the spooky backgrounds.
Yes. Strahd strikes again.
That he does.
All right, our next question is one I don't think we've acknowledged or specifically touched on in campaign yet. Your alignment in D&D 5e, you have an alignment which definitely has loosened over the years in its interpretation. Again, it's more of a background. It's more of a guideline of, okay, what is kind of your moral sense as a character, but it's not like you only can ever act this way and how dare you. The DM, especially if you have a cool DM, like our DM, Thomas, it's not going to restrict you in your actions, but it's definitely something that can help base your character as you start. So what is Ataraxia's alignment?
Yeah, I went into this trying to kind of go a little bit against type, because I love playing neutral characters, like trying to delve into the idea of what does it mean to be true neutral. And so Fleeple, he started the campaign being true neutral, and by the end of it was neutral good. And with Ataraxia, I was like, okay, I played him true neutral last time I played him. I played Fleeple true neutral. I'll make him neutral good. And we'll start the campaign there. And then like 5 episodes in, he's true neutral. He's no longer neutral good. So I ended up in exactly the place I was trying to avoid starting.
You reversed it. You reversed what happened last time. I think that's interesting, especially because Ataraxia has been chosen by the crew and fate and whatever you want to say, chaos and chance, as the captain. It's hard, I would say, to stick to neutral good as a pirate captain. You definitely have to be a little bit more even-keeled in terms of, we get into messy situations. I have to be the judge almost of the ship, and that definitely can lead to a shift in alignment or a different approach to it.
Yeah, because by his nature, Ataraxia is very kind of egalitarian in the way that he likes to interact with people, and still does have quite a bit of that, but very early on he was like, but sometimes stuff needs to get done. And when stuff needs to get done, we don't necessarily have to worry so much about how other people feel. So, yeah, there we go.
Yeah, especially because he's in a state of bliss. So it's kind of like, I don't really not care how you feel, but regardless of how you feel, that doesn't change me. So it's very much a neutral position.
Yeah, in fact, just earlier today on the Discord, based off of an episode that we just released, and I mean, this will be coming out after that episode, so hopefully you've already listened to it. But to avoid spoilers, there was this point where Josh reached out to me and was like, hey, Ned, if this character were to die, would Ataraxia, how would you feel about it? Because Ataraxia loves this character. And that's like exactly why it is a curse to only be able to feel bliss, because Ataraxia would look at that situation and want to feel sad about it, but not be able to.
That's so interesting. I haven't, I guess, thought too, at least that in-depthly about it, because I knew, he feels bliss. No matter what happens, hey, it's all good. But I never thought, does he want to feel something else? And because he doesn't that cause frustration? But it can't cause frustration because he feels bliss. So that's a quandary.
Yeah. And that's another thing that I was thinking of while I was creating him. You look at satyrs in their traditional role in Greek mythology, and they're very hedonistic little creatures in the sense of like they're trying to experience a wide gamut of emotion and sensory experience. And like, I think it was a bit more... it talked about this a bit more in the Odyssey of the Dragon Lords version of the race, I think, than in the official version, but about how satyr culture, they're all about like, they want to feel deep sorrow and deep anger, so they'll throw parties where they can have these feelings. And Ataraxia, even though he is a member of this ancestry that is all about feeling and all about kind of that hedonistic aspect of living, he is unable to.
That's interesting. Yeah. I've just never thought at least that extra layer of it. Because this is going on a tangent of the feeling of Ataraxia, and I don't know how much we want to get into it now versus obviously getting into it in our campaign, in the story. But do you think because he just feels bliss, but yet does he get frustrated? Does he get, I guess he gets puzzled, or he gets like, I don't know how to handle that. Like he feels those things, but you can still feel bliss. Like, how do you feel frustrated and feel bliss at the same time, if that's possible?
Yeah, that's the tricky needle to thread, because if you look at like Ataraxia wanting to be able to feel sad, for example, like the sort of gut reaction that we have looking at that is, does that frustrate you? But I think for him, it's just kind of like, I think it would be really cool if I could feel sad. It's a want not based out of a sense of deprivation because he doesn't know what he's being deprived of. It's based out of more just curiosity, I think.
That's cool. That's really cool to play with the bliss of curiosity, but then curiosity is a curse. And that's the bliss. The bliss is a curse. Interesting. Well, and that brings up one more, if we still want to, if you're still okay talking about this particular subject, because there was one moment, I think was it with the mutineers and everything? There's one moment where you actually, as the character, raise your voice. I think it was against Ignis, where you're like, wait, you do something like that. And I'm like, that was always interesting to me, because I'm like, wait, this guy doesn't feel anything but bliss, but yet he's raising his voice, which usually is an act of frustration or of anger. What's your take on that? What in that moment, what do you think Ataraxia is doing, or how is his bliss being not perceived, but demonstrated, even with wanting to take command of that scene?
Yeah, I think there is a certain blurring of the lines between player and character in that particular instance, because like I mentioned in A Word of Recall, this is one character moment that I had thought through beforehand and I really wanted to make land. And so there's an aspect of me as Ned being like, no, I'm going to have my moment. But also you can look at Ataraxia being like, he's all about the branding. He had that conversation with Buster, and he's like, this is an opportunity for me to do my branding. And just imagine this 13-year-old who has this really cool plan that he's come up with, and somebody is coming in here trying to like subvert that. And he's like, well, no, check it. Wait. This is my plan. Check out this plan. So yeah, in all those instances, it's based out of kind of this childish excitement that he's working with.
I like it. And we'll see how that develops further as we dive more into our story and see if Ataraxia's backstory gets drummed up more and more. That's fun. That's
Indeed.
Fun. All right. Well, my last question actually is not my question. If you listen to the first Meet and Geek character background building episode with Josh actually added an extra question at the end, which was actually really good. And it actually comes from Josh, but it also comes through Josh from Abria Iyengar, who is part of, the D&D world. If you've listened to Critical Role or Dimension 20, all the different mediums, she pops up because of just how intricate she is with it and obviously her skill. Her question that she has posed to herself a lot of times in creating characters or worlds or things like that, and that we're going to pose to our characters, is what lie does your character believe in? That there's something that your character thinks that probably isn't really true, or at least is jiving with the rest of the world, but yet it's the flaw, if you will. And that's actually something in D&D. You can write down a flaw for yourself, so this almost fits into that. What is Ataraxia's lie that he probably buys into and might demonstrate conflict and compelling story in the future?
Yeah, this ties into something I was thinking about just earlier today, with some of the conversations that were happening in the Discord, and it's something that I am willing to let be a lie. Let's put it this way, because there's a lot of speculation going on in the Discord and, probably throughout the rest of the community and within the cast. Josh was the one who originally brought it up, where he's like, is this guy really 13 years old? There's something uncanny going on here. And it's my intent for him to just be a 13-year-old kid. But if Thomas thinks that it's more exciting that as part of this Archfey curse that's going on, that I am not just a 13-year-old kid, who knows?
Interesting.
And I don't know, maybe that dispels some of kind of the mystique that's going on, but maybe it builds more mystique.
It's just
who knows?
which direction it will take. We don't know. We don't know which direction it will take. You almost left it as an ambiguity for it to develop later. So sometimes, as we've even learned, like you mentioned, in our Patreon, if you haven't signed up for our Patreon, we definitely have some channels where people dive into conspiracy theories. Sometimes we as the players don't have all the answers, and we are making it up as we go along. Not making it up, because that sounds disingenuous. More of we are discovering it and creating these characters live, if you will. And that actually leads to some of the best moments I think we've ever developed in iCast Fireball.
Yeah, and that is a way that I find we can bring some of the live action feel of improv into this game, because you and I both know the feeling of being on a stage in front of people, making stuff up on the fly, discovering as you go, and you get a reaction from the crowd. And based on what the crowd is doing, that informs your next decision that you're making on stage. It's this very immediate back and forth between performer and observer, and it's really hard to do that in a pre-recorded medium like this. But when we're able to have these moments where we're getting this feedback from our listeners of isn't it weird? Maybe, what if Ataraxia isn't actually a 13-year-old kid? What if? And me being when I came up with the character, he was just a 13-year-old kid, but now, maybe it would be really cool if he wasn't, and that's something I get to discover as well.
Or maybe it's something that he is a 13-year-old kid, and if a curse breaks in the future, he all of a sudden gets flooded with 13-year-old emotions, and that just causes even more. There's a lot of possibilities.
Wouldn't that be something?
A lot of fun that can happen for it. Yeah, it's definitely fun to play into where all this goes, and even with us building these characters and building the background to them and building kind of the backstories, it definitely takes on a life of its own, and things can be adapted, changed, or just, again, like I said, built as we experience it together in recording this awesome adventure for y'all.
Yeah, and whichever way it ends up going, one thing that I have been kind of just leaning into a little bit with the characterization of Ataraxia is I want him to be a little bit unsettling, and there is something to me that is weirdly upsetting, just weirdly unsettling about a young person who seems to know so much more than you feel like they should at that age.
I think all of we've really kind of, I think every one of us has actually kind of tapped into that. Ataraxia, definitely. I mean, literally, he's just I'm full of bliss, and then his eyes go black, and it just gets oh dang, he doesn't he doesn't feel anything, so he doesn't feel remorse for whatever he's about to do. Obviously, as we're going to dive into it more in her episode, Mickey's character is definitely having a little bit of a dark side, a little bit of an ominous, kind of, I don't know what they're about to do. Max is definitely experiencing that, and Buster. There's definitely, we've tapped into a little bit more of the unpredictability of a character. There's definitely a dark side, if you will, to each one of these people, and yeah, it'll be fun to see how they either fight against it, give into it, and how that interacts with the whole party.
Yes, and very well suited for a piratical adventure such as this.
Yes, definitely. Well, those are all of my questions for you, Ned, on our character background episode. Do you have anything else to say, to throw out there about Ataraxia, about the background of you building this character, or just anything and everything about Ataraxia? What final thoughts you have for us?
Yeah, you know what? I'll go ahead and pull this up. While I was creating Ataraxia and trying to figure out how I wanted to portray him in this iteration of the character, I went through and I wrote down a list of what I thought would be his favorite music albums if he were actually a 13-year-old kid in our real world. And so, listeners, if you want to get a taste of just some of my weird musical interests and a bit more of like what Ataraxia is about, here are a few albums you can check out. El Oso by Soul Coughing, The Chosen by the one and only People Mover, Comfort Eagle by Cake, Plastic Beach by Gorillaz, and Spirit World Field Guide by Aesop Rock.
Interesting. All right. You can check that out and see if you can add to our conspiracy channel on Patreon. As you listen to that music, you can maybe try and drum up some, I think this is where that's coming from, or maybe this is what we're going to reveal more about Ataraxia. Definitely some fun things to tap into, or just to get, again, a general feel of Ned's mindset when he created this awesome character that we're growing into as we listen. Alrighty, everybody. Well, thank you so much for listening again to this special Meet and Geek character background episode of iCast Fireball. I'm Jacob, and again, with me tonight is
Ned Wilcock, and I play Ataraxia Caelian.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share iCast Fireball with anybody and everybody. Give us a review on any of your podcast mediums of choice, and also check out our affiliated podcast with us that some of our cast members have created. Obviously, we have with Josh, we have the Sneak Attack podcast, which kind of started a lot of us out in this idea of creating our own story. He also has Titans of Altera, and then obviously we have Ned's Improv Tabletop. Ned, what's going on in Improv Tabletop right now? This episode, usually we actually record episodes and they get released like a month or two after we've recorded them. This one, though, is actually going to be released pretty close. So what's actually going on right now in iCast Fireball? We are in Improv Tabletop, because when this gets released, we'll actually probably be right around that time.
Yeah, so we ended up needing to take a little break from the Nightmare Before Groundhog Day recording that. So in the meantime, yes, the Nightmare Before Groundhog Day, you heard that correctly. In the meantime, I don't know how this happened, but Sonic the Hedgehog has become a part of the Improv Tabletop brand, particularly Sonic media from the mid-90s that is not very good. And with that in mind, we watched a Sonic the Hedgehog movie from the 90s called Sonic the Hedgehog the Movie, and we reviewed it, and it was something. It was really something to observe that movie and to get into a fever dream discussion about it.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I forgot the name of it. I follow another thing on social media where they do that as well, and it's definitely fun to dive into those obscure movies. And hearing it was you and who else is recording on that?
That is Christian, who I mentioned earlier, and Connor, also from Improv Tabletop, and then special guest correspondent Sammy Ryan, who is the biggest Sonic fan I know and has watched pretty much every bit of Sonic media there is to watch and played all of the games as well. So we had a professional to join us for this conversation rather than just the rest of us chuckleheads.
Well, there you go. If you like Sonic the Hedgehog, or you just want to hear some awesome commentary about a strange movie from the 90s, go check out Improv Tabletop's special episode that reviews that. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends and fellow wacky adventurers. Until next time, I'm Jacob, and we have Ned here, and let's keep that fire going, and we'll see y'all next time on iCast Fireball.